What's the nastiest thing you've seen at a party? I was at a house party years ago, and there were about 10 people crammed into a very small bedroom. A 16-year-old girl does her first beer bong, with room temperature Milwaukee's best, for non-Americans, one of the pissiest of pissy US beers. She managed to finish it, wide-eyed and shaking her head in denial of what we could all see coming. She proceeds to projectile vomit every drop of liquid she'd consumed, but for some unholy reason kept thrashing her head around as if to deny it or make it not happen. I've never seen so much throw up in my entire life, and since she was more or less in one corner of the room, I don't think there was a single person in there that didn't get hit by the explosion. My best friend, whose room it was, took the brunt of it. The initial blast took the poor sucker directly in the face. I managed to curl up into a terrified little ball and only had the side of my arm and leg hit. It was just the worst puke ever. This kid had to take at least 2 deep breaths in between puke geysers. Blugga blugga blug. Inhale. Blugga lababa. Inhale. Bledge dribble. Cow 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 sob sob. It was an amazing, horrible thing to witness. Like I imagine a poison gas attack would be. Everyone reacted as though someone had dropped a grenade. Some tried to flee, literally climbing over one another and jamming up in the doorway trying to escape at the same time. Some, like myself, just sort of hit the deck and prayed they would be spared. It was a goddamn war zone of barf afterwards. Furniture had to be thrown away. A GameCube was destroyed. Afterwards, this poor girl just looks around in horror at what she'd done and breaks down into the most choking sobs I've ever seen. It took us a little while to feel bad for her, but, of course, it could have happened to anyone. A GameCube was destroyed. Ha 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 ha. My friend did a backflip on a trampoline while at a party and pee drunk. Ended up clipping his chin on the metal part of the trampoline and opening it up. There was a bit of blood but not that much, however he definitely needed stitches in his chin. So a friend who is an army medic thought it'd be a good idea to stitch said friend's chin up with a sewing needle and some thread. He actually did a pretty neat job of it, as the friend who whacked his chin didn't want to leave the party. All was going well until a person who had arrived to the party after the incident thought the person had a piece of thread on his chin and decided to yank it off, not knowing we had stitched his chin. Had to pick the lock to the bathroom because this girl had not responded for some time. Coming in, we find her sleeping over the toilet, puke in the bowl. Her pants were down, but not the thong, and she had managed to crap herself, splitting the crap right down the middle. Classic log splitter. Someone crapping in a kettle and then switching it on. Room cleared. Can someone find the post where the guy threw up chunks of fruit in the punch bowl, and people ate the chunks all night? That's got to be one of the worst. Girl gets wasted, proceeds to get butt-ass naked and finger herself on the couch for all of the party to see. Made for an awkward internship environment for the rest of the summer. One of my guy friends chugged 151 straight from the bottle for 10 seconds. He then proceeded to projectile vomit on everyone in a 3-foot radius exorcist style. Dang. I chugged half a fifth of Cuervo straight from the bottle on New Year's. I woke up in the hospital and apparently I had thrown a jar of nacho cheese and chips around my living room. Some guy was just walking around naked carrying a poodle. He was erect. It's called presenting. We were having a party at my apartment. Last day frick that place kind of party. And there were like 8 people out on our little balcony smoking cigarettes. And there was one chick holding her beer. And she seemed pretty fricked up. But pretty much everyone was. But she was standing right in the middle of the balcony. Puts the beer in her hand up to her lips and proceeds to vomit. She thinks the bottle will catch the vomit. But instead it was like putting your thumb over the end of a hose and just sprinkled the entire freaking balcony. I mean, top to bottom everyone out there was just covered. I did this once. Was wandering around Isla Vista in Santa Barbara on Halloween my freshman year, going into the various house parties that were happening. We walked into one random house to check it out and it was pretty crowded. I noticed some space over near the kitchen and headed through the crowd. As soon as I turned the corner into the room, however, I was greeted by what I could only describe in the few seconds I saw it as a heavier set girl dressed as what I could only guess was some sort of healthcare worker, getting blowed up against the wall by a small ginger kid in a 300 costume with a pile of puke on the floor beneath them. Got the frick out of that party real quick. Classic Isla Vista. Freshman year of college. 2011. A guy ate a digested piece of poop corn from a toilet bowl for box of wine. We called him the Colonel, until he dropped out less than a month into the semester. In high school, I was at a party and there was a Chinese girl there who must have been about 4 feet 9 inches. She was wasted. I remember standing next to her and looking at her, and she had turned a color that I can't even describe. She then got down on all fours and threw up everywhere. The most horrid looking puke I'd ever seen. All over my shoes and the carpet. Everyone went dead silent. For some reason, I asked her, "What did you eat?" and she looked up at me from the floor, eyes bloodshot, puke dribbling down her face, and said, "Baja fresh," and then threw up all over again. Chartreuse. The color was chartreuse. I watched my best friend's dad put a $20 bill in his daughter's pants while she was pretending to strip. He encouraged her to take it off and watched as she made out with dudes. Oh, and to add to it, while the sister was hot, think Kirby Smulders only at 16, while the dad was a big biker dude who looked like he would have rode with the Sons of Anarchy. Chick who spent the evening bragging about her family and significant time talking about her son's special needs. Out of nowhere spread eagle on the kitchen floor and was eaten out, with 4 guys in line to do the same. No, her husband wasn't there. No, it wasn't that kind of party. There weren't even that many people there and she wasn't even drunk. She was a co-worker of our friends and she had joined us after the bar closed. Friend lived nearby. Awkward party. Clearly it was that kind of party. Some dude was bet $50 to slam a cup that was 1 stroke too full of chew spit, cigarette butts and 2 shots of vodka. He got 2 quick swigs in before projectile vomit erupted across the kitchen. The crowd roared. He got the $50 though, so that's cool. My friend's ex came to crash his housewarming party at his new apartment. At some point she got incredibly drunk and took a crap in the elevator. My friend had long passed out, so I took a bag, picked it up and tossed in the garbage chute. I could feel the warmth through the plastic. Sigh. In the morning after someone let her know what she did, she asked me if it was at least cute. She wanted to know if her poop was cute. What? I was at a party in high school at a girl's house and no one there was showing the house any respect. Holes in the walls, broken crap, stolen crap, the works. Anyway, this one guy decides to take a crap on a cookie sheet, put it in the oven, and bake it at 350. Incredible. Never in my life have I seen or smelled anything quite like that. In college my friends and I at some point decided buying airsoft pellet guns was a good idea. We'd get drunk, then play a fun game called Ricochet Roulette. You weren't allowed to directly shoot the person. Rather, you had to bounce your shot off the wall into the person. We'd play this stupid game in the sunken living room in a house full of people. One night my friend Pete was very drunk and insisted we play. Invariably someone would always get pee and directly shoot someone else in retaliation. So to curb this, we created a rule by which everyone else playing would shoot the offender. Anyway, not too long into play, Pete shoots someone, and we all shoot him. He storms off like a child, then a few minutes later comes rushing back into the room with 2 airsoft guns. There's a Mexican standoff moment and partygoers are yelling at Pete, "It's not worth it, man. Walk away." Out of nowhere Pete raises his guns in the air and screams there was a firefight and starts shooting up into the air. This would have been hilarious. We were all fans of Boondock Saints, except he was standing under the light fixture. Glass shower down on him and the lights go out. Everyone is like, "WTF Pete," and starts to move around trying to get some light in the room. Some flips on the adjacent kitchen light and Pete is passed out on a bed of broken glass. Not injured by the light, just used his last remaining energy to frick things up. Party's over. I walk home. I swing by the next afternoon and all the roommates are cleaning up. Pete walks up to me and says, "Hey, this is actual. You wouldn't happen to know what happened to the light last night, do you?" Implying I had done it. Freaking Pete. Fortunately there were some people that saw the whole thing, so I was able to set him straight real quick. Any sort of porta potty at any music festival. The worst times are early in the morning, right before the sun comes up. I was actually relieved to open each one and only see a mountain of crap overflowing above the top of the toilet seat. Versus all of that mess and my worst nightmare, which was finding someone in their drug frenzy hanging out, or even worse, having sex in one of these horrific places. I just began waiting until 8 AM to use them immediately after the cleaning trucks came by, and I was always first in line. Add LSD to this equation and you're gonna have a bad time. This is definitely not the response you were expecting. But, one time, when I was 9 or so, my parents hired this reptile guy to host my birthday party. He brought this huge lizard and it projectile pooped all over our living room. Not really a party, but I saw two guys whip out their dongs in the middle of the mosh and pee on each other at an Eminem concert a couple weeks ago. You people seem alright. Your friends, however, are freaking disgusting. Friends. I got a lap dance from a M-mouthed, obese, energy drink chugging chick on my 21st birthday. I turned in, and as I drifted off to sleep, crash she belly flopped onto and subsequently broke down through the slats of my IKEA bed. She was wasted, and she just rolled around on the disabled furniture repeating AHM gonna steamroll ya. AHM gonna steamroll your sounds like something some B-rate supervillain would say. It was one of my first college parties and a guy on my floor made the mistake of talking to a football player's girlfriend while the guy was just a few feet away. He immediately came over and started screaming at the guy and shoving him. So he just ran off out of the party rather than getting his ass beat or thrown out, and assuming it was over everyone just goes back to partying until a few minutes later when he returns and taps the big linebacker on the shoulder, and as soon as he turns around slaps him right across the face. What we did not realize at first was that he had ran off and masturbated into his hand before coming back. No pun intended. The football player is pretty much stunned and stands there long enough for the guy to run off one final time. The surprise on that football player's CM smeared face still disgusts and amazes me. Comes lap. Piddle scoot. It started as just a normal high school party and turned into the most legendary night of all. There was this gross girl that was blacked out on rum and 4 lockers, and was found in another room by herself, sitting butt-ass naked on a hardwood floor in a large-sized puddle of urine. Once everyone had gathered there to see the spectacle, she tried to scoot towards the bathroom door, smearing pee and a few dingleberries across the wood floor. Once she made it into the bathroom, the door closed and a loud glass broke from inside. The kid whose parents owned the house went in and found her laying in another pile of pee, now mixed in with blood from the broken glass that mildly sliced her ankle, and the alcohol caught up to her stomach and she was now puking everywhere. The grossest part was dragging her downstairs and throwing her in the shower. It took like 5 people trading off in between holding your puke down from the stench. I fed her croutons in a drunken attempt to sober her up, and once she washed all the puke, pee, and blood out of her hair and regained a sense of reality, she was super embarrassed. Apparently she did the same thing again a few months later. I fed her croutons in a drunken attempt to sober her up. I love drunken attempts to sober people up. Had a New Year's Eve party in a hotel with a bunch of my friends. This was going into 2000, so we felt the need to party extra hard. We had a guy come in, take shots with every person there, pounded vodka out of the bottle. 10 minutes pass and he is in the bathroom puking and peeing on himself while people throw tortilla chips at him, telling him he needs something in his stomach to combat the vomiting. Only one person knew this guy, never saw him again, but Doug the Drunk's legend lives on in my circle of friends. It all happened in the span of 15 minutes. Same thing happened to me kind of. I don't remember his name. It could have been Doug. Was standing out on a balcony at this party. Guy drives up, asks which door to go through, comes up, drinks like 10 beers, introduces himself to everyone, then pieces out 20 minutes later. No one knew who the frick he was. Hotel workers of Reddit, what's the strangest, most disgusting thing you've ever seen happen? Obligatory not a hotel worker, but just a keen traveler wanting to break up the feces stories. It stayed in a resort where it was a series of clay huts that comprised the hotel. This was in Namibia. You booked a hut, chill and go about your life. When I arrived I found the door to my hut with scratches on the outside and several bolts. A sign saying do not open at night. Strange, I didn't sleep that night as I could hear a child wailing outside in pain and scrabbling at the door. Once I heard the door trying to be wrenched open. Next morning I spoke to the other guests who had had a similar experience. Turns out that it was monkeys that mimicked human sounds to make people open the door and attack them. Stranger than fiction. That's creepy as frick. 3 young girls shared a room were wasted. Next morning they were very quick to check out, not even went for breakfast. Turns out they took dumps all over the room. We blacklisted them and sent their rides to other hotels telling of what happened so they could be aware if they showed up. At least we could take the money for the stay or the credit card they gave. I don't work for a hotel but for a hotel reservations website. Once got a call from a client who was staying in Thailand, asking to be relocated. When we asked why would he need that, he told us the police was there because the property owner, it was a villa, not a hotel, had murdered her husband and buried him under the villa. When he called us they were there with an excavator and a coroner's crew. On top of that, the villa owner ran away with the client's passport, so they also required consular assistance. I'm gonna need you to go a bit farther with this story. Worked in a crappy pub that offered crappy accommodation. A guest rightfully lost their crap after they climbed into bed and found a soiled pair of men's underwear. They fired the housekeeper after that. I used to work as a quality supervisor for a 5 hotel. Basically my job was to make sure that both the staff and the guests have no ongoing issues. One morning, I was around the reception area. Guests were leaving in masses. I asked a few of them about their stay, took positive and negative feedback. Suddenly, one of the receptionist girls waved me over. A guest couple was checking out. I think they were Irish, age around 24-26. Completely normal couple. The receptionist girl pulled me over and said that one of the cleaning crew notified them to send me up to the couple's room immediately. A bit puzzled, I go up to their room. It was trashed. Like completely trashed. Like if there were some blood splatters around, it could have seriously looked like a scene for a brutal murder case. Among 100 other things. Broken chair, broken TV, pillows and sheets all over the place. Curtains torn down. The bathtub was clogged with the bathrobes and the floor was completely drenched. The table seems like some sort of makeup and other unknown things were used to paint all over it. A pack of wet Asian noodles was slammed on the ceiling. A tampon inside a lamp. And so on. Completely in shock, I went down to immediately talk to the couple. I questioned them, but they acted like they don't know what I'm talking about. Called in the higher ups. In the end, they were forced to pay a considerable amount of money for the damage they caused. The strangest thing was they were genuinely acting like they don't know what happened at all, not just trying to lie or make up a ridiculous story. After they paid, still acting like they did nothing wrong, and left. I went on to investigate the issue a bit more. I ran into some of the other guests from the floor they stayed in and asked them if they saw or heard anything strange. As it turned out, the couple acted like they were on drugs the night before the accident. Like heavy drugs. They stood in the hallway for 30 minutes, just staring at the wall. For example, they left claw marks on the inside of the door, which I didn't even notice at first. The staff did not get called because other people thought they were just moderately drunk tourists. To this day, I do not know what drug they took, but that room left a permanent mental image in my head. They might have been secret agents trying to fight off assassins that got in through the window. When I was just out of high school, I worked as a housekeeper at a decently upscale hotel. The main policy regarding cleaning rooms was unless it was illegal activity, just clean around it. Okay, fair. I had seen paraphernalia in hotel rooms and chosen to just ignore it. Guns laying around in their lock cases during a gun convention. Fair enough. But I wasn't prepared for what I saw on a night room turndown. Basically, you lightly freshen up the room, make the bed prepared to be used for the night and drop a chocolate on the pillow. When I moved the sheet down to make the tuck for turndown, there was freaking child pee pictures. I immediately spoke to the night manager, who contacted the police. I was allowed to anonymously make a report because the man was already on probation. He wasn't allowed to even be staying at the hotel. He was from the area and utilized hotels to meet other pedos. Because it was probation, they could be more flexible with warrants and such. Still bothers me now. It may bother you now, but imagine who it might have bothered had you never bothered to speak up. Simply by taking initiative, you may now be the hero that some young kid will never need to know saved them. We were a small pet friends hotel in a medium-sized NC town. There was a guest in town for a few months that was covering for someone at one of the local plants. This guy was traveling with his dog and generally seemed like a pretty alright guy, even if he was a recluse. This guy said we didn't need to go into his room for housekeeping since his dog wasn't the friendliest and he liked to do the cleaning himself. This isn't really an abnormal request and we never had trouble with people doing that in the past, so we were happy enough to save our girls a room on the housekeeping boards. After 2 months, the guy checks out and we go into the room for the first time in that span. What we found was a smorgasbord of disgusting. Opening the door we were assailed by the overpowering stench of dog urine. Okay, that happens sometimes. Taking the first step into the room, our shoes are greeted with a squish and literal dog urine coming up over the top of our shoes. This was obviously worse than we thought it would be. Exploring the room further, we found that the mattress and chair were completely soaked through with dog urine and growing literal mushrooms and mold. The wood on the tables and dressers was split and peeling. Beyond any kind of salvage. The bathroom had poop stains on the floor and in the tub, but the tub also had a temporary bed of blankets and pillows set up in it. This dude was literally coming back to his room every day and sleeping in that mess. The only thing he bothered to clean up was the dog's crap. Mostly. This was for 2 months. We had to completely strip the room and rehab it because it was so bad. This also prompted us to create a policy where we had to enter every room at least once a week. No exceptions. It amazes me that guy slept in there and supposedly went to work each day. I don't know how he managed to hold down a job if he lived like that. Don't even want to think about how filthy his actual home must be. I used to work at a restaurant attached to a hotel and would be responsible for room service calls. There was the one older guy who was staying alone, visiting his wife in a hospital as she was dealing with a sudden and terminal cancer diagnosis. At first it was fine. He would just order dinner and a bottle of wine every night. Then it became 2 bottles of wine. Then 3, spaced throughout the day. His wife passed and then it became 4. The hotel staff was starting to get worried, but he wasn't really breaking any rules. He would just stay in his room all day eating and drinking. Until one time I went to deliver his daily dinner. He didn't even call in orders anymore. He got the same thing every day, and he didn't answer the door. I thought I heard a cry from inside, like a pained groan or something, so I put the food down and went to tell the front desk. They said they'd handle it. I later found out he tried to get out of bed and just collapsed after drinking himself into a stupor. He had been there for hours and was laying in his own filth. They kicked him out after that, and ended his 3-month stay. I felt really bad for the man. He was going through heartbreak and was struggling to cope. We had a girl staying for a week in our place. She would call my office phone a few times a save for our janitor kid to get her snacks from the vending machines and take her cash to pay for her room. Her reason was that she had very bad leg pain and it was hard to walk. Hospitality is our business, so no one complained. When the kid went to the room, she was always seated in a wheelchair with a blanket draped over her from the waist down. At the end of the week she called me crying that she couldn't take the pain anymore. Would I call for an ambulance? When the EMT arrived and pulled the blanket away, they found out the awful truth. This young girl was a nursing student and had used her stolen instruments to cut off her leg mid-thigh. She did it in the tub and washed the blood down the drain. She had gotten through the bone and had been working on the underside flesh. It goes without saying she had some kind of mental issues. She was admitted to the hospital where they worked to reattach her leg and then sent to the psych ward, when her family was notified. According to the nurses at the hospital, friends of mine, they did not come. I often think of this girl and wonder what became of her. Some people feel like they are born with limbs they shouldn't have. Because doctors in general won't cut off a healthy limb, they either deliberately gravely injure themselves or try to amputate on their own or with the help of others. I've worked in a fair few of London's most famous hotels as a gardener and have some weird stories about people there. Barbara Streisand always made weird requests. For example, she demanded a fresh roll of turf every day be delivered to her room so her dog could pee crap on it. I also found a huge log of crap inside an interior palm too. It was literally tucked into the crown of the plant like a vigilant guard. No idea why someone would feel the need to do that, but hey, people are weird. I also found a huge log of crap inside an interior palm too. Please tell me this did not coincide with Ms. Streisand's visit. Obligatory, not me. Mother, ex-hotel manager. Some guy crap and then pulled some out the toilet and rubbed it on the wall. Known because the wet toilet paper used was all over the floor. The cleaning staff weren't allowed to clean it. Had to get specialists in. Poop removal, human feces specialists, I guess IDK. Yeah, I specialize in crap and crap removal services. I was a night auditor 10 years ago in an airport hotel. We had a pilot staying in our hotel. His name was Trevor. Trevor got drunk and locked himself out of the room just wearing a very tiny piece of underwear. He used the phone of the corridor to call us open his room. Could happen, right? This repeated itself for 3 times. So after the 3rd time we told him that we would not run up to open his room anymore. So after half an hour he came downstairs saying he locked himself out of the room again and that he would spend the night in the lobby. After he fell asleep in the lobby we decided to carry him to his room and we literally put him in bed. This time he stayed there. No idea why he would lock himself out all the time. No idea why he didn't wear any more clothing. I guess drunk. But heck, he was annoying. Humiliation kink. This happened last week. Saw a really drunk Korean guy inspecting a coconut tree. Apparently he decided he really wanted to climb a coconut tree at 1 AM. I didn't see him fall. Just heard the thud. Nothing serious happened to him. He got the wind knocked out of him and passed out. The security guards tried to help but they got bitched out by his equally drunk girlfriend. She sobbed over him for a while, then I think she went to sleep on him. Saw them both at breakfast though. Just strange, but whatever. You wanna pay $200 to sleep outdoors? Be my guest. Be my guest. Guy that works in a hotel. Not from me, but my sister works in the hotel biz and a colleague of hers told her about a time when a man checked in and wouldn't let anyone go into the room for over a week. They were all suspicious of what he must be doing as the corridor outside the room started to smell really bad. One day he went out, so the staff snuck in to see what was going on. I bet they wish they hadn't. He had dead fish hung up all around the room and they had condoms inside, starting from the mouth going into the body of the fish. So I think you can guess what he had been up to. I'm not sure what happened, but I've never heard anything like it. What the frick? Not a hotel worker, but checked into a hotel in Covent Garden, London a few years ago. We're next in line and just about to walk up to the desk and this woman very passive aggressively tells the receptionist that there are 2 naked men in her room. She got a new room. I mean, I feel like at that point being passive aggressive is called for. I was running room service up to a room one evening. They'd placed the order half an hour before and knew the wait time, so normally people were half ready for the knock at the door. Got to this woman's room and all I can hear is giggling and whispering. Eventually she opens the door a crack and I tell her that her food's arrived. She shut the door again and more giggling, then opens it slightly wider. I tell her I need to come in to put the tray down and for her to sign for the food and same again, giggling. Door closed. She then opens it wearing a towel. Get in the room. She signs and that's when I see it. A naked man in a chair in the corner, casually covering a very erect penis with a single page from a newspaper. Like this guy had over 2 minutes to change, hide, cover up and instead just opted for the front page of the Times. They were into it. A couple checked in, left the room destroyed. Henny bottles, Jack bottles, Chong, mattress was flipped and torn. Sheets had a crap blood mix on them. Took us forever to get the room in order. I work front desk at a hotel. I wasn't there for this but heard it through a co-worker. An older man about 40s or 50s apparently needed to use the bathrooms very badly and didn't have time to make it back to his room or even to the lobby bathroom. So what does he do? He finds the nearest housekeeping closet that's open, then proceeds to squat and crap in a random bucket. The worst part? One of the housekeepers was in the closet getting linens. The thought of her just silently watching in horror is hilarious. I used to work in room service and saw a lot of weird stuff. I've been asked to pour ice buckets over naked prostitutes in a bathtub. These were VIP return guests. Somebody also asked me to deliver a banana, olive oil and cream to their room. Once I was working New Year's Eve and a lady shut the door behind me when checking her minibar fridge, closed her eyes and started having premonitions about me meeting my husband in the next year. It was super strange, however I was too polite to leave. Met my husband exactly a year later on New Year's Eve at the hotel. Not a hotel worker, but I did do a short stint as a room checker for my university during the summer break. Basically it was going into student halls' rooms and checking for damages, anything left behind, and generally making a laundry list of how much of your deposit are we taking from you kind of stuff, as well as setting up the rooms for new students coming in. The worst, by far, was a dorm room that was very neat and tidy on the face of it, but when you opened the door to the ensuite bathroom, well, it's tough to describe, but the entire shower and walls around it were caked in wet hair. And I mean caked, you literally couldn't see the walls in some places. The whole place smelled like rancid wet dog and pretty much made me vomit instantly. Unfortunately the nearest toilet was right there in front of me, so I kinda got stuck in a vomit loop before I eventually made it out of there. We have no freaking clue what the heck happened in that room. There had to be some sort of animal involved, because there was no way that much hair came off one human being, even the hairiest of us. But even if he was washing a dog or whatever in there was no way this could have happened accidentally or just being too lazy to clean. It was just far too, well, everywhere. Even if we were to assume that Ishi cleaned his hot dog in the shower every day for the year he spent there, it still didn't seem like it would be enough to cause that much crap on the walls. I learned later that this room in particular was deemed not fit to be used for the next wave of students, since during our second round where we put all the new student crap into every room, we were told to skip it. I was very freaking pleased about that. While I'm here though, a weird thing we found was just what people were willing to leave behind after they left the halls. We found laptops, boxes, designer watches, jewelry, whole cabinets of clothes. Some people legitimately just didn't pack their stuff at all and just fricked off. Sometimes you couldn't even tell some rooms had been vacated at all by the way they looked, and we actually had to get confirmation a few times that people had actually left. It was put down to the richer foreign students who didn't care that they'd lose their deposit or could easily replace all the stuff they'd left when they got back home. Not massively crazy compared to the stuff that will eventually grace this thread, but just thought it worth mentioning. Just finished working in student halls in the UK, and some of the stuff left by the rich students is mind-numbing. They would buy all this top-grade house stuff for the 1 year they are here, then throw it out. I found a nearly new £2,000 keyboard in our bins. TVs, game consoles, kitchen appliances, it's insane. Had a guy wander into our employees only kitchen completely naked. I sent him back to his room. He gets on the elevator and I think that's the end of it until I have to use the elevator a minute or two later. He's just standing there, so at that point I call the police to help sort it out. I worked at a hotel that had ice machines on each floor. Our ice machines were not the type where you push a button to release the ice. Instead, you open up the bin and scoop the ice out. Every month or so, maintenance would remove all the ice and thoroughly clean the bins. 1 month, we found a used condom in the bin. BRB, never eating public ice again. This guy brought a middle-aged H with him. Couldn't do anything as she was included in the reservation, and they were making a lot of noise at 2 AM and I received a noise complaint. I went to talk to them. Both were outside the room only wearing a towel, and both casually opened their towels to readjust them when I was talking to them. Guessing they were into being seen and forced it to happen by making a ton of noise and getting caught. After high school I worked in a hotel on Miami Beach. I was young, fresh out of high school. I was a bellhop in the hotel down there. One day we got a call to move a guest out of his room. I went up to the room, knocked on the door, and when I opened it the guest has spray painted the entire room gold. He said it was 24 karat gold because he stayed in hotels in Saudi Arabia that were solid gold. So he wanted to make his room look like that. He spray painted the bedsheets, light bulbs, bathroom, everything in that room was gold. They moved him into a hotel down the beach and didn't tell them. What's the most physically disgusting experience you've ever been through? A fly wedged itself into my eye and got under my eyelid. I ran while twitching like crazy across a football field-sized playground and asked somebody to help and they pulled it out. It survived. New. Accidentally sipping from my old roommate's spit bottle. It was a Gatorade bottle full of black chunky spit and I was drinking a Gatorade. Set my Gatorades next to the spitter and wasn't paying attention. Took a big ol' gulp of that nastiness. I vomited it up, which was also gross. Did the same with cigarette ashes and butts in a Coke bottle that still had Coke in it. Same story, it was right next to my Coke bottle. Freaking disgusting. I can't even imagine it being someone's spit. I had norovirus and was pee out of my ass on the toilet while throwing up in the bathtub simultaneously. Afterwards I was pretty lightheaded and laid down on the bathroom floor. When the next wave came I was too weak to get up and just crap all over myself and eventually fell asleep on the floor. Sounds peaceful. I was working at a veterinary office and a client came in with his cat as an emergency. The cat was stiff as a board and in this really unnatural position. I'm pretty sure it was seizing, but didn't find out what happened with it because I grabbed it, cradled it, rushed it to the treatment area and turned it over to a doctor. As soon as I handed it over I saw that the cat basically had been oozing a lot of bloody diarrhea and it was all over my shirt, my arm, and in my hair. The smell was rank. All the vet staff out there know what kind of smell I mean. I have longish, thick hair, and it was coated in fecal matter from my shoulder down. One of the kennel staff ended up helping me wash my hair with strawberry oatmeal pet shampoo with my head hanging over our grooming tub. Just thinking about it makes me want to puke. When I was about 14-15, I had a blocked salival gland. We went and saw the doctor, got referred to a specialist a few weeks later. Finally get in, and this thing is like a huge black worm attached to the bottom of my tongue. The specialist takes my mum into the other room and apparently says to my mum, "We can operate, but there will be a waiting list and it's expensive, or I can just deal with it now." So my mother chose the expedient option. They gave me a cup of mouth rinse which was supposed to numb my mouth. He then held my tongue with a pair of forceps and starting chopping at the blocked gland with a pair of scissors. Suddenly it ruptured, spilling an unmentionable volume of cottage cheese-like substance throughout my mouth, and continued to erupt disgustingness like I have never physically felt before. I've almost puked twice writing this. It was nasty and it smelled and tasted exactly like you would think one of those awful cheese-like blackheads you see being popped on YouTube videos. Really hate getting anything under my tongue ever since. I got really addicted to painkillers. Really bad. They can frick you up in a bunch of ways. One of the side effects is constipation. I had an episode where I couldn't crap but was beyond backed up. I almost passed out from pushing too hard. It was literally ripping me open. I decided to go in with 2 fingers and break it. It worked and I whimpered. After I was done I took a bunch more pills to get over what had happened. I must have washed my hands for 30 minutes. Between the blood and smell, it scarred my soul. Slight update. I got sober shortly after that. A month or so later. Fingering your bottom can bring you close to rock bottom. That's why you shouldn't do drugs, kids. I had a pilonidal cyst. They appear on the lower back right above the butt. It started draining pus before I went to the doctor and a guy in my math class said, "It smells like cheese." That was the rotten smell of the pus. Also, in history someone said there was a bad smell and blamed it on their wet Uggs. I'm pretty sure that was my cyst too. Pretty disgusting. My sister said to never talk to her about my cyst again, and I haven't. This is from a time when I was in paramedic school. I was doing a rotation in the local trauma unit and I watched as EMS and fire wheeled a 500-pound man into the trauma bay. The stench that followed him curled my nose hair. It was horrific. The poor medics and firefighters were absolutely pale and several of them took refuge over at the nurse's station. I wandered over and a medic I knew personally was physically crying. He was leaning over the counter, tears streaming down his face as he just kept saying, "The crap." The crap was everywhere. I couldn't stop puking. I assume he was talking about a hoarder's house. I once walked into a home where there was a 1/4 inch of water on the floor and come to find out, the occupants of the home were urinating, defecating on the floor. I've seen some crap when it comes to hoarder homes, but the doc was telling everyone to go into a different room so they could get blood work and that they had to take the ambulance out of service so it could be professionally decontaminated before use again. I heard a commotion behind me and I turn around to see a nurse stumbling out of the trauma bay. An emesis bag we affectionately call a horse condom held to her face and she was puking noisily into the bag. The doc looked at me with a look of horror and we both walked into the bay. As we pushed the doors open, we were met by a wall of stank. It smelled so bad. The smell had its own texture, taste, and feel. You could literally feel the scent trying to skull frick you into unconsciousness. The patient was laying on 2 beds that were hastily strapped together and there was a pool of green, greasy diarrhea on the floor around him. It ran off the bed in little oh frick this rivers. The patient would moan and more would come squirting out with the worst squishy and moist farts I've ever heard. I stood by the door frozen in place. The doc stood next to me, a 30-year veteran, and he began to puke noisily into the biohazard container next to me. I followed suit in the scrub basin. I have been into hoarder homes that were covered in fesses that smelled better than the death pit I just walked into. Slowly, we recollected ourselves and the idea was to put in Flixizil, think Foley cath for your ass, and get the patient cleaned up. I was tasked with holding open the patient's cheeks to slam the Flixizil in and also to help clean up the patient as we went. It took 45 minutes to put the Flixizil in. The stream of death never stopped. By the time we were done, we were all covered in all manners of yuck. The trauma bay was split into 2 rooms with a wall and we all had to go into the other trauma bay to strip down into hospital gowns. Then we ran off to take showers in the locker room. I've never felt so dirty in my life. C. diff is a C. The swamps of Dagobah 2, Electric Boogaloo. I worked at a lab that processed literally hundreds of gallons of blood from various farm animals a day. Part of the job was cleaning out tubes of red blood cells and serum that had coagulated into a gelatinous mass with my fingers. Hundreds of these tubes a day, thousands in a week, and this was only one of 6 different animal bloods I dealt with regularly. I work in a hospital and we were standing up an older man that had a golf ball size blister on his ankle. Right when we got him up I felt something wet down by my shoe. I look down and see that this man's blister exploded and a lot of it hit the space in between the bottom of my scrubs and the top of my sock aka bare skin. I don't gag at work but this was the one exception. Had a ruptured appendix at 7 years old, before keyhole surgery, and the wound got infected. Was in the hospital for weeks and would randomly wake up during the night with the sheets drenched with gunk from the wound, from chest to mid-thigh. Even 25 years later, if I'm cleaning out the fridge and get a whiff of rotten veggies, suddenly I'm 7 years old and lying in the hospital bed all over again. Oh god, that smell. Ugh. Stomach flu. On my period. In summer. Just so many fluids. From so many places. Oh god. I worked in retail for 15 years and we had public restrooms. The worst thing is when someone has a bad time in the restroom and handles it poorly. Imagine a fine splatter of diarrhea covering the entire toilet and much of the wall as well as fingerprints on the wall, the stall door, and the door of a neighboring stall. Now if you have poop on your hands you need to go to the sink. This involves getting poop on the sink and surrounding countertop. This person also got poop on their shoes and or it was trailing from their pants leaving footprints across the floor. When I saw the extent of the carnage I knew from past experience that the rest of the store needed to be checked for poop trail. The trail seemed to start off to the side of the building and wind its way back to the restroom leaving little poo droplets. When departing the store that chose a different path and that trail was more smears footprints. This was all in carpet in the distance from the front of the store to the restroom was a good solid 100 feet. It took 3 people over an hour to clean up. We had to go to the store for extra cleaning supplies and some lady yelled at one of the people working on the trail about spraying cleaning chemicals in public where her children would smell them. Later in the day the restroom still smelled like death so I went back to investigate further and found poop on the paper towel holder and soiled underpants crammed into the tiny in the stall trash can that is for feminine hygiene items. There was also some larger unidentifiable item of clothing in the larger trash can by the door. I am glad I no longer work in retail. P.S. If you have a public bathroom keep a container of clumping kitty litter around. Unknowingly getting a spider caught under my pizza, taking a bit and ending up with chewed pizza and spider in my mouth. The wriggling, feeling like having multiple hairs in the pizza and the flavor I can't quite describe gave it away. Of all the foul, nauseating stories on this thread, this one killed me. Night Reddit. When I was a very stupid teenager, I was working under the table for a local restaurant. One day, the owner asks me if I'd like to make some extra cash. See, they were the former owners of a catering business, and they used to use this rental unit kitchen on the other side of town, but they hadn't used it in 3 years, and the lease was up. So for $5 an hour, they wanted me and this other guy to go over there and clean it up, so the new tenants could get moved in. The place had no electricity and hadn't for a couple years, so when we opened the door, only darkness greeted us. Darkness. and a blast of the most revolting, putrid air I have ever experienced. I have cleaned animal corpses out of my woodshed. I have wrestled with a badly skunked German Shepherd. I have been to Newark, New Jersey, but nothing compares to the freaking stench of that old, black kitchen. It was as if, 3 years ago, the place had been in full swing, preparing for a banquet, when suddenly everyone dropped what they were doing and ran away, never to return. Pots full of rot stood on cold, cobwebbed stoves. Chafing dishes sat lined up in the insulated hot box that was the fridge, brimming with curdled remnants of leftovers. Knives and ladles still lay across the work surfaces, with the stains and goop of rotten food still on them. The trash cans were full of trash, which had decomposed, along with the bags, into evil black soup. I still do not understand how it was left in that condition. It didn't make any sense. But that other dope and I spent hours gagging on the miasma of preposterous neglect, shoveling rotten biomass out of a dark, dank building by flashlight. I felt filthy on the inside for days after that. I felt like something, or many horrible things, must have invaded my mouth and lungs and poisoned me. It was disgusting beyond my ability to explain, and I'm trying. I recently tried to play the new Resident Evil, and I can't. It's not the screaming rednecks, it's the dark, festering house, and the pots full of death, and the fridge full of rotten filth. It takes me right back to that kitchen and I want to vomit. I feel like I need a shower just from remembering this. While crapping my guts out, I puked into my underwear. I was at a fancy restaurant hiding in the loo. Had to call my mum to help me. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, I asked for the awake route. During the surgery, I kept asking for a handheld mirror so I could stare at myself being drilled while laughing. The doctors were disgusted by my weirdness, but I was having fun. They took the mirror away a few times because I was blocking the light, hence why I kept asking for it. They thought I was a masochist, but it was just an act to trick myself into not having a nervous breakdown. It worked and I actually enjoyed it by simply pretending to enjoy it. Looking back, it was disgusting to see my own jawbone. You're weird as heck, dude. When my mother told me that as a toddler, she was giving me a bath when I suddenly shat myself, and then I decided it would be a great idea to eat it. Felt dirty for a week. Username already deleted. LOL. One of my kids was born in a birthing pool. Amazing experience, don't get me wrong, but the 8 or so hours I spent in that pool trying to support my wife was the most physically disgusting experience of my life. Food poisoning. It just comes out both ends mercilessly. The worst feeling is when you have thrown up so many times that you no longer have food but keep throwing up whatever you have left in your stomach. Table next to mine in the dissection lab perforated the cadaver's bowel while opening up the abdomen. These weren't fresh cadavers either. It had taken us about 4 months of study to get around to opening the abdomen, plus however long the poor guy had been dead for until we started our dissection. The smell of the cadavers at that point in the year wasn't great to begin with, let alone with congealed, rotting bowel contents thrown in the mix. I clogged the toilet in one of my high school's bathrooms, and I'm not that guy who leaves poop in public toilets, so I wrapped my hand in a bunch of toilet paper, physically separated the poop, without it touching my skin, mind you, flushed it successfully, and then furiously washed my hands and left. I still think about it a lot. If your hand is in TP, in crap water, your crap is touching your skin. Was a nurse in California, but this happened during nursing school. We were doing rounds when we noticed that a patient had a fecal bag, similar to colostomy bag but placed around the rectal area, that is oddly bloated. Thinking it was a new nurse not knowing how to place a fecal bag, we'd attached the bag to remove the air. Yep, you guessed it right. The air was gas and it was the most horrendous odor my nostrils have ever experienced. A classmate vomited and the rest gagged instantly. First semester of college, was packing my suitcase around 12 am BC. I was taking a bus at 8 am to go home for the weekend. I checked my fridge for any perishables that I should eat before I leave, and saw my sushi roll I had gotten at the market earlier that day. A mistake. I scoffed it down, and within 20 minutes I was already having flashbacks of the nightmare that was to come. I am 19 years old, and I have thrown up twice in my life. My stomach was not equipped to handle this war. After kneeling before my dorm toilet for 2 hours, nauseous and in denial, it happened. Suddenly, hundreds of grains of rice Usain bolted up my throat and propelled into the toilet bowl. This projectile vomiting continued for 20 seconds before ceasing, but I was unaware that the rice grains had reproduced while in my system because I proceeded to spew 3x as much sushi into the toilet than I remembered eating. My throat burned from the soy sauce, my nose burned from trying to breathe through the never-ending shower of vomit. Bruised, battered, and defeated, I made the journey back to my room and laid in bed ready to forget about this tragedy, but I should have known that every good horror story has a sequel. My first day on the floor as a nurse, me and this other guy had to check on woman that had been in rehabilitation for quite some time. She was just wearing the hospital gown and nothing else. We roll her over on her side to check her bed sores when she lets out the smelliest fart you could ever imagine. Our faces are only about foot away from her exposed anus, so the smell just jumps right into our nostrils. Burned my hand quite badly. Got given an oral shot of morphine. The process that came after was hilariously gross. Essentially my entire hand and part of my forearm had to have the dead skin and gunk peeled and scrubbed off it. The experience was both less daunting and more mind-boggling from the morphine. But the other funny thing was that the nurse dealing with the skin and gunk removal was joking about how she found it fun to try and get the biggest bit in one go. Stepping on a slug. I ate one as a child. I cut a cyst on the top of my wrist and had to squeeze the pus out. Ugh, so much pus. I cut a cyst on the top of my wrist. I'm not convinced these aren't lyrics. I was combat medic with the US Army Infantry. I'll just say this, after one emergency I started keeping small plastic cups in my aid bag, like Dixie cup sized, hard plastic, because they're perfect for protecting eyeballs that pop out of somebody's head. Just put the cup over the hanging eyeball and do your best to tape it to the casualty's face. Also, just because a lazy medic says the guy in the driver's seat of a blown up tank is dead because he knows getting him out will be a pain in the ass, don't listen to him. Find a good medic, because he'll spend an hour getting your buddy to strap to a backboard and get his ass out rather than leave him to die, so it'll be easier to pull him out. Probably getting part of my toenail that was practically growing through one side of my toe, as in just about ready to burst through the skin, removed. The way the chair was shaped, my head was facing my feet and it was too painful to really keep my eyes closed. I tried as hard as I could to just look at the ceiling instead, but I couldn't. I watched as the doctor inserted a long skewer into my toe, and then pounded it with a rubber mallet to drive it further in. Once in, he took several cutting tools in there and then finally some tweezers to extract the now cut section of nail. There was literally so much blood that it got on his clothes. White uniform had large spurts of red on it. I wasn't aware one little nail could cause so much havoc. My friend clogged the toilet on an overnight trip when we were in school. We played a game of what are the odds to see which one of the four had to unclog the toilet with their bare hands. What are the odds is essentially a quick game you play amongst friends with a bet on the line. Loser does the bet. We said the person has to legit take out the crap, hold it out of the toilet water, flush once, and then place poop strategically back in the toilet so that it would flush easily and smoothly. And you can guess who lost. Another time when I was younger, we sort of half owned a stray cat who came home after vanishing for a few weeks with a nasty wound on his lower back. On further inspection, the wound had totally festered. The whole area was crawling with maggots and it smelled like death. I cannot describe how bad the smell was, worse than roadkill. I tried so hard to pick the maggots away with a pair of tweezers, but after a few hours it was clear that he was suffering and not likely to survive. So we took him up the mountain and my dad put him down as humanely as he could. One of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I still can't forget the smell or stand the sight of maggots. As an adult, my 3 cats are strictly indoors and get regular vet visits. Never happening again. People that work or have worked in bikini waxing salons. What is the worst disturbing experience you have come across while giving someone a bikini wax? NSFW. This wasn't really something gross that the client did, but something that the esthetician did. I'm currently in school for aesthetics and one of my instructors was telling us about a former student who was scheduled her first Brazilian appointment. Everything went well until she got to the woman's butthole and she wasn't really sure what to do with it, so she scooped some hard wax up with a popsicle stick, spread it across and stuck it inside her butthole like we do with nose waxes. Well, I'm puckered shut. Got full on Hank Hill butt right now. I have one. A girl came into my salon a month before she got married. She had never groomed her pubic hair and claimed to be a virgin. She wanted to be waxed right before her wedding. Completely natural, right? I recommended she get a wax now, and another before the big day since there was no way of knowing how her prized lady bits would react to the wax. She declined and set an appointment 3 days before her wedding. Fair enough. When she came back, I was not prepared for the amount of pubic hair she had. It was unusual for a fair-skinned blonde client to have long coarse black hair, but whatever, it's my job. So I trim her up, clean her, and prepare to wax her. Again, she had ungodly amounts of dark hair. Even trimmed, her skin was barely visible. So after inspecting her and not seeing any issues, I begin waxing. I crap you not, she had skin tags and perturbing moles that I did not see before starting. To get to the point, I pulled a strip from her labia area and pulled off about 20 skin tags. She yowled. The entire salon heard, and then she started bleeding, like gushing blood. We know how to handle bleeding pores, but I had never heard of this. So we're both screaming and crying and I have to call her an ambulance because she would not stop bleeding. I thought I almost killed her. Maybe not the grossest story, but it was traumatic. I changed professions soon after. I imagine her wedding night wasn't magical either. Sounds like HPV, not skin tags. I used to be an esthetician and I'll never forget the first Brazilian I ever gave a girl. I was inexperienced, so to get the butt area I made her go on all fours. After I powdered up her butt, I was holding her cheeks open and closely examining the direction of her hair growth so I'd know which direction to spread the wax, as I was trained to do. Then all of a sudden I see her butthole opening and closing and opening and closing, and then bam, she fully farted in my face. She was super embarrassed and said it was an air bubble. Didn't smell like one though. It was just saying hi. Esthetician here. My worst experience was a full Brazilian wax on an extremely obese woman. I was relatively new to the field and lacked the experience to deal with this type of situation. I couldn't get the angles right. I felt so awkward asking her to hold her stomach that blanketed over her vagina, and her legs were just too large for me to actually reach the area. She was unable to bend the legs properly. I think at one point I lost wax between a fold and had to pry the skin hair apart to apply the strip. I remember my back hurting from the way my body was positioned, frantically trying to finish on time for my next client, and so much sweat, both of us. It was the dead middle of summer. I'm sure a seasoned esthetician may have been able to handle this better, but that's my worst experience. Thank you for your service. I currently work at a waxing center and I have had many foul experiences. I love my job, but sometimes I wonder why I still do this. A new client had come in for a full Brazilian. She was no older than 17 and it was her first time doing it. I was trying to make her as comfortable as possible and explain everything I was doing. So we finish the front and I tell her to flip over and hold her butt cheeks so I can do the butt strip. I apply the wax over her butthole. I guess she wasn't expecting it because she farted and blew a bubble with the wax. It popped so loudly that it echoed in the room. I had never seen anything happen like that before. I could see she was humiliated and I was embarrassed for her. I immediately turned around and started fumbling with anything I could get my hands on to pretend I didn't just see what happened. I never saw that girl again. I have a story from a client of mine about a previous coworker. So I have this client coming in for a Brazilian. As soon as we are in the room, she warns me that last time she was in, she didn't like her last experience and let me know that she has her clit pierced. I was like, cool, no probs. Thanks for the heads up. Let's try to make this better. I figured she lifted or bruised. So we get started, and there's the piercing. No biggie. Well, halfway through, she starts talking, and I was like, I hope this has been a better experience for you. I wouldn't want a repeat of last time, and she explains that it wasn't the waxing, It was the waxer. Apparently, when she explained her piercing to the previous esthetician, she pulled the towel back and patted the pierced clit without gloves, saying how she has never seen one of these before. Under no circumstance are you to directly touch a client there. The woman was not impressed and refused to return until she was sure the previous esthetician was no longer employed. So it's not really my experience. I just felt bad for my client. Okay, I know that you are showing your most intimate parts, and there's a lot being touched down there, but to touch the clit is a huge no-no. Like WTH. Not a waxer but a client. Waxer asked what I was doing on my phone and I informed her that I could hit 2 Pokestops at the salon. I lured one while getting waxed because why not? One thing led to another and she started singing the Jigglypuff song as she waxed my butthole. I'm bummed she left. I'm sad this comment is so far down because it is charming. Oh, I have a story. I am not a waxer but one time I was getting waxed at a new place and thought things were going just fine. I was making small talk with the esthetician while all spread-eagled on the table. She was facing away getting her supplies ready and she started sniffling and I thought she might be crying. I was like, okay, I know it's been a while, but I can't be that shocking. And I asked, hey, are you okay? And she turned around just full on ugly snot crying and explained to me that the appointment before mine was her recent ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. Oh man, that would be so awful. Bulging hemorrhoids. I never knew 2 words that could sound so fricked up before. Thanks for that mental image. My roomie had one today and said the lady doing hers went see that pillow in the corner. We used to have it over here for y'all to clutch onto for comfort until a lady started hitting me with it. Now it stays in the corner. A worm fell out of someone's butthole when I was waxing it. A tiny, little maggot while looking worm. Finally a worm reply. My instructor in cosmetology school told me about a time when they had to practice anal waxing and the way she was supposed to do it involved her putting talcum powder on the butthole area. So she powders the person up and as she is grabbing something else from her work table the person lets out an airy toot and a little fluff cloud of powder came with it. She couldn't contain herself and had to do the assignment another day, haha. LOL, I just imagined this little comic strip in my head with the word toot and a speech bubble coming out of someone's butt. How many guy clients come in to get waxed, asking for a friend? A place in Omaha advertises the baseball special, the bat, the balls, and the dugout. My waxing lady and I talk about this all the time. She said girls come in on their periods all the time. She doesn't mind as long as there's a tampon in place and it's clean. Some ladies don't comply. She's seen women who haven't properly wiped their BH after taking a dump. But the weirdest thing she saw was a girl who was born without an butthole. I don't know who, why, how, what, where, but yeah, that's weird. Unfortunate. Mostly. My buddy was born without a butthole. They ripped him new one shortly after he was born. The best part, I kid you not, he has the ability to suck air and water into his butt and expel it again. I never went to the pool with him again after that. Esthetician student here. I plan on going into Brazilians Manzilians bikini waxing and full body after graduation. The number of people who come in during their monthly cycle, only wearing a pad. Come on now. I've had a few Brazilians done and I asked my waxer what her worst experiences were and she said there are so many people who come straight from the gym or their afternoon jog or their strenuous workplace without showering or anything. How can you have that little self-awareness? Reading that smelled bad. My friend is esthetician. She has sent ladies to the gym for growths, aromas, etc. She says it's about once a month that she has to have that awkward talk with a client. The worst one she ever told me about was a sweet older lady with a labial abscess. Poor woman, it must have hurt like heck. She had it treated and came back to say thank you. Not a waxer but a spray tanner. For well-endowed women of the bust or butt the policy is arms overhead or turn around and bend over. Only if absolutely necessary do you lift with the back of the hand and spray underneath. On this lovely day I had a particularly hefty woman come in and she don't want no tan lines. It was time for turn around and bend over. Lift the butt and what looked like a week-old sopping brown tampon comes slurping out, bounces off the back of my hand and splats on the floor. I always feel so self-conscious before going for a bikini wax, and I always tell myself they've seen worse. Thanks for confirming that. Yeah, I'm suddenly feeling really good about myself. Used to work with a girl whose second job was as a waxer. She would regale us with stories of this one repeat client who would get holiday themed designs. So not only would she create Christmas trees and Valentine's hearts for her, but would also have to dye them the appropriate color. That is amazing, not disturbing. I got a full Brazilian as a dude. Female esthetician works on me. My GF is waiting in the lobby. After she's about halfway through the front, she asks if she can ask a slightly unprofessional question. I say sure. She says she's never seen a circumcised penis before but didn't ask me any actual question, just made the comment. The worst part was that the walls were thin, so pretty much the whole lobby heard the conversation. I once was the gross customer by pure accident. My former girlfriend liked the idea of shaving your chest, etc. The less hair I got on my body the better. Blah blah blah. Insert story here. I did bleed so heavily out of every damn pore on my chest that the lady stopped mid-session. After the bleeding had stopped somewhat, I helped cleaning up, paid and left. The bruises were visible for several weeks. I did never try waxing again. Not really gross. Fairly common during waxing, especially with first timers. If you do try it again, exfoliate the area leading up to your appointment. Makes the hair come out a tad easier. I'm a vet and we had a client come in who did waxing at her home. Unfortunately, her curious dog got a bit too close and tipped the whole pot of wax over itself. It was a very long and not so fun day for the pup and everyone involved. That stuff is super hard to get off. Not my story, but my aunt's. When she was in school to become an esthetician, the students would do cheap waxes on walk-in clients to help them learn. The first time she did a Brazilian, she noticed long red scratch marks as she was waxing the girl. Initially, she was worried she was doing something wrong, but neglected to say anything because the girl didn't seem in pain or anything. What she thought were scratches turned out to be part of a larger tattoo that covered the girl's entire vulva. It said Bad Kitty and featured claw marks. Once she finished school, she limited her waxing to face only. During my first full Brazilian, I asked the worker if she has had any horrible disturbing experiences. He replied, "I'm having one right now." She was joking, I think. It's funny this is NSFW even though you're all talking about work. How ironic. My sister is an esthetician and when she was in training she had a woman come in for a Brazilian wax. She was prepping her for the waxing, which involved cleansing the pubic area with an alcoholic base cleanser. As she did this, hundreds of crabs scattered from the woman's bush. Turns out the woman had no idea she had crabs and had to find out then that her husband was most likely cheating on her and passed them on to her. My waxing lady used to work in an actual salon but now works mobile. She had a dude come into the salon who wanted his back, sack and crack waxed. As standard practice, she told him she would leave the room for a few minutes whilst he got undressed and positioned himself on the table. Upon her return to the room, she found the guy dressed in an adult diaper, bib, frilly hat and with a dummy. He asked her if she would be his mommy. I think more crap went down but she didn't go into detail. I don't know if she quit right away, but that is why she no longer works in a salon and only has clients she can trust. You have been visited by the birthday cat. Like this video in 3.58 seconds will do nothing. He's still cute though. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.